My beloved child, stop scrolling. Pause here for a moment, because what you are about to hear is wrapped in a mystery that has been moving quietly behind the scenes. Something has been revealed to your soulmate, and the person at the center of that revelation is a man you may never have fully understood, the gray-haired man. Your soulmate has just discovered who he really is, and the reason this matters is not because of his appearance, his age, or the mysterious way he has moved through the background of this story. It matters because he knows something. Something about you. Something about your soulmate. Something about the path that was interrupted between two hearts that were never as disconnected as they appeared. My child, do not allow fear to rush ahead of the truth. What you are about to hear is a fictional spiritual message created for reflection and inspiration, but enter this story as though heaven is pulling back a curtain one layer at a time, because tonight, there is a question hanging in the air. Why did the gray-haired man appear at exactly the moments he did? Why did your soulmate notice him? Why did this stranger seem to know things he should not have known, and why, after all this time, has your soulmate finally discovered his identity? There is a reason, and the answer begins with a memory your soulmate had almost forgotten. It was a moment from the past, a brief encounter. A glance across a room, a conversation that lasted only a few minutes. At the time, your soulmate thought nothing of it. They remembered the man's silver-gray hair. They remembered his calm expression. They remembered the way he listened without interrupting. But there was something unusual about him. He looked at your soulmate as though he already knew their story. Not the story everyone else knew. The hidden story. The emotional story. The story your soulmate had never fully explained to anyone, and that was the first clue. Your soulmate did not understand it then, but now they do, because recently, someone mentioned the man's name, and when your soulmate heard it, something inside them stopped. The name was familiar, not because they had spoken to him often, because they had seen it before, somewhere, in an old document, an old message, an old conversation, a place they had never expected to find it, and suddenly, the gray-haired man was no longer a stranger. He had a connection to the past, a connection your soulmate had overlooked. A connection that leads directly toward the chapter involving you, my beloved child. Sometimes heaven does not reveal a truth by opening a door. Sometimes heaven reveals it by showing you that the person standing beside the door has been there all along. That is what is happening here. The gray-haired man was never random. Your soulmate simply did not know what they were looking at, and now that they do, old memories are rearranging themselves. Your soulmate is remembering every strange encounter, every unexpected appearance, every moment when the man seemed to be nearby, every time he asked a question that seemed strangely personal, every time he looked toward you. Every time he looked toward your soulmate, there was a reason. But before that reason can be understood, you need to know something about this man's character. He is not the villain your fear might imagine. He is not necessarily there to destroy anything. In fact, the truth may be almost the opposite. He may be there because he has spent years protecting something. A promise, a memory, a truth, and perhaps, without realizing it, He has been waiting for the right moment to stop protecting the silence. Your soulmate has just discovered that, and that discovery has shaken them, because your soulmate thought the gray-haired man was connected to someone else. They thought he belonged to another part of their life. They thought he was simply an older acquaintance, a family connection, a professional figure, or someone who appeared occasionally by coincidence. But the truth is more intimate. He knows the history. He knows what happened before the separation. He knows what was said when you and your soulmate were still close, and he knows something your soulmate never knew. There was a moment when someone tried to convince him to intervene. Someone wanted him to speak against your connection. Someone wanted him to influence your soulmate, but the gray-haired man refused. He would not lie. He would not manipulate. He would not tell your soulmate what they wanted them to believe. Instead, he remained silent, and that silence became part of the mystery. Your soulmate has spent a long time wondering why certain people disappeared from the story while others seemed to remain in the background. Now they are beginning to understand. The gray-haired man was watching, not in a sinister way, in the way someone watches over something fragile when they know that one wrong movement could destroy it. He saw the confusion. He saw the pressure. He saw how outside voices were shaping decisions, and he knew that one day, the truth would have to come from the people involved. But your soulmate was not ready. You were not ready. The circumstances were not ready. So he waited. Years may have passed, perhaps months, perhaps only a short period that felt much longer because of the emotional weight. But the gray-haired man remembered. That is what makes the discovery so powerful. He remembered what everyone else had forgotten, and now your soulmate has learned that he kept something, a letter, not necessarily a physical letter, perhaps a message, perhaps a recorded conversation, perhaps a piece of evidence. Something that preserved a moment in time, something that proves the past was not exactly what your soulmate believed, and when your soulmate discovered that this existed, they asked one question: why didn't you tell me? The gray-haired man did not answer immediately. He simply looked at your soulmate, and that look carried years of restraint. Because sometimes the hardest thing for a person to explain is not what they did, it is why they waited. Finally, he said something that changed the emotional temperature of the entire conversation. He said, "Because you would not have believed me then." Your soulmate became silent, because deep inside, they knew it was true. They had been too defensive, too hurt, too influenced by what they had already been told. If the gray-haired man had revealed everything then, your soulmate might have rejected the truth simply because it contradicted the story they were emotionally attached to. So he waited. He waited until your soulmate began asking questions on their own, until the old explanation stopped satisfying them, until the silence itself became suspicious, until your soulmate started searching for the truth rather than searching for someone to blame. That moment has now arrived, and the gray-haired man knows it. That is why he has finally stepped forward. But there is something else. He does not want what your soulmate thinks he wants. Your soulmate initially believed this man wanted them to stay away from you. That assumption was based on the way he behaved. He was distant, reserved, careful. He rarely encouraged your soulmate to chase you. He rarely gave emotional advice. He seemed to disappear whenever the conversation became too personal. Your soulmate interpreted that as opposition. But now they are realizing it may have been protection. Protection from what? From making another decision based on incomplete information. The gray-haired man wanted your soulmate to choose freely, not because someone pushed them, not because someone frightened them, not because guilt manipulated them. He wanted them to see clearly, and there is a reason that matters, because the gray-haired man knows that if your soulmate returns to you, it must be because they finally understand what they are choosing, not because somebody convinced them, not because they are lonely, not because the past suddenly became romantic, but because they can finally separate truth from fear. My beloved child, this is why you must not chase the revelation, let it come. There are things moving without your involvement. Your soulmate is asking questions you cannot hear. People are remembering things you cannot witness. Old conversations are being reopened. And the gray-haired man is preparing to reveal something he has carried for a long time. But he has one condition. He wants your soulmate to listen to the entire story before making any decision. Not half, not fragments, the whole story. Because one of the most dangerous things about a hidden truth is that even truth can be misunderstood when revealed in pieces. The gray-haired man knows this. He does not want your soulmate to hear one shocking detail and immediately run toward you. He wants them to understand the sequence, what happened first, who spoke, who listened, what was misunderstood, what was hidden, and why you were never given the same opportunity to explain yourself. This is where your soulmate's emotions begin to change. At first, they were suspicious, then curious, then angry. Regret. Your soulmate began wondering whether they had judged you unfairly. They remembered your face, your silence, the moment you stopped trying. They remembered the last time they saw you and thought you did not care. But now they are asking themselves whether you had been hurt too, whether you were waiting for them to ask the question they never asked. Whether both of you were standing on opposite sides of the same misunderstanding, and the gray-haired man saw this realization happen. He did not interrupt. He let your soulmate feel it, because there are some truths that cannot be taught, they have to be experienced. Your soulmate finally whispered your name, not angrily, not with resentment, with sadness, and then they asked the gray-haired man something that revealed how deeply the past still lives inside them. Did they ever stop caring about me? The gray-haired man looked at them, and for the first time, your soulmate saw something in his expression that they had never seen before. Compassion, not pity, compassion, the kind of expression someone wears when they know the answer will hurt before it heals. He did not answer immediately. Instead, he reached into a folder. Yes, my child, a folder. Old, carefully preserved. Inside were pieces of a story that had been separated from one another. Names, dates, messages, notes, fragments of conversations, things that seemed meaningless individually but became powerful when placed together. Your soulmate watched him open it, and suddenly the room felt smaller. Because this was no longer a conversation, it was evidence, evidence that someone had been keeping track, evidence that someone had remembered. Evidence that the truth had not disappeared simply because people stopped talking about it. The gray-haired man placed one item on the table. Your soulmate looked at it, their expression changed. Then he placed another, and another, each one connected to a moment your soulmate remembered differently. The first piece explained the beginning. The second explained the separation. The third explained the silence. But the fourth was the one your soulmate could not look at for long, because it contained something written by you, something your soulmate never received, something that had been intended for them, and suddenly, the gray-haired man's identity became almost secondary. Because your soulmate realized that this man had been holding something more important than information, he had been holding a message. Between two hearts, a message that never reached its destination. Your soulmate stared at it, their hands trembled slightly. They asked why he had it. The gray-haired man finally told them. And his answer was not what your soulmate expected. He said he had received it on the night everything fell apart. He had been asked to keep it. He had been told that it would be better if your soulmate never saw it. But he never destroyed it. He could not, because something about the message told him that one day, your soulmate would need to know it existed, and that day had arrived. Your soulmate looked at him and asked the question that had been waiting beneath every other question: who asked you to keep it? The gray-haired man became very still. He looked toward the door, then back at your soulmate, and for several seconds, he said nothing, because the person who asked him to hide the message was not a stranger. It was someone your soulmate trusted deeply, someone whose advice had influenced the separation, someone who had always claimed they were acting out of love, and now your soulmate was beginning to understand why that person had been so determined to control the story. But there was one thing the gray-haired man still had not revealed. Why? Why would someone go that far? Why hide your message? Why influence your soulmate? Why keep two people apart? The answer was not simple, and it was not only about jealousy. There was another fear, a fear connected to something that happened before you and your soulmate even met, a family secret, a promise, a history that had been carried from one generation to another. And the gray-haired man was connected to that history. This was why he had appeared. This was why he had waited. This was why he wanted your soulmate to know the truth now. Because he knew that if your soulmate learned the real reason behind the interference, they would finally understand why certain people behaved the way they did. But my beloved child, there is a warning here. Not every person who claims to protect you is protecting your future. Sometimes people protect their version of the past. Sometimes they protect their reputation. Sometimes they protect a secret, and sometimes they protect themselves from having to admit they were wrong. The gray-haired man had watched this happen. He had watched people choose silence because honesty was inconvenient. He had watched your soulmate make decisions without the complete story, and he had watched you carry pain you could not explain. Now he wants the truth spoken, not for revenge, for release. That is what he wants. He wants your soulmate to know who you really were in that chapter. He wants them to know what you actually said. He wants them to know what was hidden. And perhaps most importantly, he wants your Soulmate to stop blaming you for a separation you did not fully understand either. But there is something your soulmate has not yet discovered. The gray-haired man is not merely a witness. He was involved in the moment that began the entire chain of events. He was there. He heard the conversation. He saw the decision being made. And he knows exactly what was said immediately before someone decided that you and your soulmate should be kept apart. Your soulmate does not know this yet. They believe the gray-haired man arrived later. They believe he only learned the truth afterward. But that is not what happened. He was there at the beginning. And when your soulmate finally asked him why he never came forward, the man's eyes filled with emotion. He said there was a promise he had made, a promise to someone who is no longer able to explain themselves, a promise that kept him silent for years. But now, that promise is being challenged by something stronger. The truth. And just when your soulmate thought they had heard everything, the gray-haired man reached into the folder one more time. He pulled out a photograph. Your soulmate looked at it, then looked again, because standing beside the gray-haired man in that photograph was someone they recognized immediately. Someone connected to the night of the separation. Someone who had claimed they were nowhere near the situation. Someone who had always denied knowing what happened. Your soulmate's face changed. They whispered, "Why are they with you?" The gray-haired man did not answer. Instead, he turned the photograph over. There was a date written on the back, a date your soulmate remembered perfectly. The date everything changed. And beneath that date were only 7 words. 7 words that made your soulmate realize the gray-haired man had not been protecting the past. He had been protecting the truth until the right moment. Your soulmate read those words. Their breathing stopped. And then the gray-haired man finally said the sentence he had been carrying all these years. The person who separated you knew that you were both still in love. And my beloved child, that was the moment your soulmate understood that the story they had been living with was never the whole story, but there was still one name missing from the photograph. And when the gray-haired man finally pointed to that empty space, your soulmate realized the person who had orchestrated everything had been much closer to them than they ever imagined.